On a stormy night that seemed almost straight out of a nightmare, the wind howled like a wounded beast, and rain pelted against the windows like icy daggers. The lightning that dripped across the sky cast eerie dancing shadows that twisted and writhed along the walls. Amid this tempest, I was left alone with my 8-year-old brother Tim. Our parents had left for a week-long trip, leaving us to fend for ourselves. I wasn't thrilled about the responsibility, especially on a night like this, but we had food, emergency numbers, and reassurances from our parents that everything would be fine. As darkness enveloped the house, the storm's fury intensified, rattling the windows and shaking the very foundations. Tim and I huddled together on the couch, trying to distract ourselves with a movie. Yet the storm's rage made it nearly impossible to focus, and an uneasy feeling settled in my stomach. By midnight, Tim had fallen asleep, curled up against me for warmth, but I couldn't shake the sense of foreboding that hung in the air. Lightning illuminated the room in brief. Stark flashes cast in long sinister shadows that seemed to stretch out and reach for us. That's when I saw him, a tall figure standing outside our window. My heart leaped into my throat as I held my breath, hoping it was just a trick of the lightning. But no, the figure remained, an imposing silhouette against the stormy backdrop. His gaze seemed to pierce through the rain-soaked glass, locking onto me with an unsettling intensity. Fear paralyzed me, making it impossible to wake Tim. I watched in terror as the figure moved closer to the window, his movements slow and deliberate. Another flash of lightning revealed his face, a pale, twisted visage twisted into a cruel, sinister smile. A cold shiver ran down my spine as the figure tapped on the glass, the sound echoing like a death knell. Tim stirred beside me, but I dared not move. My mind was a whirlwind of panic, praying for morning to arrive and dispel the terror. The figure tapped again, more insistently this time. Then, with a jolt, he tried to open the window. Panic surged through me as I scrambled to my feet, my mind racing with thoughts of escape. But before I could act, the window creaked open and the figure slipped inside. My heart raced as he loomed over me, his height and the darkness cloaking and making his features indistinguishable. The stench of decay, sickly sweet and nauseating, wafted off him, making my stomach churn. I managed to whisper to him, saying, "Who are you?" My voice was very trembling, but the figure didn't respond. Instead, he took a slow, deliberate step closer. His gaze was icy, unyielding, and it felt like it was boring into my very soul. I wanted to scream for help, to run, but fear had me rooted to the spot, paralyzed as he closed in. Then, just as suddenly as he had appeared, the figure was gone. I blinked, struggling to grasp what had just happened. Had it been a dream, a trick of the storm? The open window was the only proof I needed that it had been real. The figure had been here, mere inches away from me. With my legs trembling, I stumbled backward, grabbing Tim and rushing out of the house, not daring to look back. And as we fled into the storm-ravaged night, the tempest roared around us, its fury matching the terror that still gripped my heart. The figure was out there somewhere, lurking in the darkness, and no matter how far we ran, I felt he would always be one step behind us, haunting our every move. As the first light of dawn broke through the clouds, chasing away the darkness and the nightmares, I know one thing with certainty: I would never forget the night the tall man came to visit and the terror he brought with him. It was a stormy night, the kind where the wind howls like a banshee and rain lashes against the windows like icy daggers. The lightning slashed through the sky, casting eerie shadows that danced along the walls. I was driving a truck with a fellow driver. His name was John. After picking up our load, I took the first shift, battling the relentless rain from Detroit to just shy of St. Louis. We stopped at a rest area to swap out and catch up on our log books. Exhausted from the 10 hours on the road, I was relieved when John went to bed, but not before he joked with a smile, "If we get killed, I'll come back and haunt you." I settled into the bunk, put on a movie, and tried to drift off to sleep. The thought of what to do in an emergency kept creeping into my mind, especially if we were to go over a cliff. I resolved to hit the deck, get as low as possible, and pray. But just 40 minutes later, I was jolted awake by John's frantic voice yelling, "Shit, hang on." I could feel the truck weaving uncontrollably. My heart raced as I threw myself onto the floor, praying that we weren't plummeting over a cliff. The curtain was closed, so I couldn't see what was happening up front. Then came a violent impact that shook the entire truck. There was a terrifying moment of silence, but the truck's forward momentum didn't waver. We were fully loaded, nearly 80,000 pounds, and I'll never forget that bone-rattling feeling and the sound of the crash. In a disorienting blur, we had slid on the wet pavement, gone airborne, and landed in an oncoming traffic west of St. Louis on I-554. After slamming head-on into another vehicle, our semi flipped over, now facing east. Suddenly everything went eerily quiet. I was in shock. John asked if I was okay. I managed to reply that I was, but we needed to get out. Smoke was bellowing from the mangled hood, and I had crawled out through a door that had become the truck's new roof. Standing in my socks on a wet highway, diesel fuel mixed with rain soaked through my feet, I watched in a daze as people ran to the white pickup truck we had collided with, wielding fire extinguishers. The chaos felt surreal, as though I was trapped in a nightmare. My hand and mouth were bleeding, and I was trembling uncontrollably. Once the fire was out, I saw an ambulance attendant talking to someone from the white truck, trying to offer comfort. The compassionate look on her face as she mouthed, "I know," was etched in my memory. John and I were whisked away in an ambulance, and I cried uncontrollably, overwhelmed by the horror of what had just happened. When we arrived at the hospital, the devastating news hit the occupants of the white truck. A man, his wife, and their 4-year-old daughter had not survived. The weight of guilt settled over me. Why had I survived when they hadn't? The smell of diesel mixed with rain and smoke lingered in my memory. Months later, when I drove through that stretch of highway, now patched and renamed Blood Alley for its notorious accidents, it was a painful reminder of that night's horror. This harrowing experience serves as a grim reminder to never take driving for granted. Whether it is texting, eating, or reading while behind the wheel, always keep your focus sharp. Life can change in an instant, and every trip, no matter how small, deserves your full attention. I used to work for a small security company, and most nights were uneventful. Just sitting in empty buildings, making sure everything was in order. My name is Tom, and I'd been at it for a few years, but there is one night I'll never forget. It was a chilly October evening when I was assigned to watch over an old, abandoned hospital on the edge of town. From the moment I arrived, the place gave me the creeps. Broken windows lit to the wind howl through the empty halls, creating eerie echoes that set my nerves on edge. But I needed a paycheck, so I steeled myself and got to work. As darkness fell, an unsettling feeling settled over me. I tried to push it aside, convincing myself it was just an old building, nothing to fear. I methodically went through my rounds, checking every corner of the hospital. Everything seemed normal until I reached the basement. The air down there was thick and musty, and my flashlight barely pierced the darkness. That's when I heard it, a low guttural growl that sent chills down my spine. I froze my heart, hammering in my chest. I tried to tell myself it was my imagination, but then I heard it again, much closer this time. I know I had to leave, but my legs felt paralyzed. Slowly I began to back away, my flashlight trembling in my grip. That's when I saw them, glowing eyes staring at me from the shadows. I let out a terrified scream and turned to run, but something grabbed my ankle, yanking me to the floor. Panic surged through me as I kicked and thrashed, trying to break free from whatever had me trapped, but it was relentless, dragging me further into the pitch-black abyss. Desperation fueled my struggle, and just when I thought I couldn't fight anymore, the grip loosened. I scrambled to my feet and sprinted up the stairs, bursting out of the basement and into the open air. I didn't stop there until I was safely outside, gasping for breath and drenched in sweat. Looking back at the hospital, I half expected to see whatever had attacked me chasing after me, but there was nothing, just the ominous silhouette of the building against the night sky. I stumbled to my car, shaking uncontrollably. I had no idea what I had encountered down there, but I know one thing for sure. I will never go back there again. The next day, I quit my job, citing the need for a break, but the truth was, I was terrified of what lurked in the shadows. of that old hospital. To this day, I still have nightmares about that night, and every time I close my eyes, I can hear that haunting guttural growl echoing in the darkness, a chilling reminder of the horrors that lie just out of sight.